This show is sponsored by PowerfulWomenUSA.com, a place to grow, learn, and be inspired by successful women. Hey, everybody, I'm Jill Conway, and this is Secrets of Powerful Women, a show dedicated to celebrating and supporting strong and successful women and sharing their stories. I'm hoping that you will be inspired to pursue your dreams, reclaim your voice, and discover your strengths. So my guest today is Regina McCann Hess, and she's a financial planner, founder of Forge Wealth Management, and author of the book Superwoman Wealth, How to Become Your Own Financial Hero. Thank you for being here, Regina, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and speaking with you.
Oh, well, I'm excited to have you. So let's begin with the book first off, because I love the name, Superwoman Wealth. How did you come about that name of that book?
Yeah, I think it's because I feel like women need to be empowered to take back their ownership of their handling their finances. And we don't realize that we do so much for everyone else, and we put all of our needs aside, and we kind of are superwomen with everything in our lives, except when it comes to taking care of our own finances sometimes, and our own health even. Yeah. So that's why I chose that to hopefully let women envision themselves being more powerful and empowering them to do more for themselves.
I love that. And tell me about the book. What is it about the book? Like, if someone never heard of it, how would you describe it? Because it's very important. It's a very important book for all people to read, especially women.
Yeah, I did it as an educational resource for anyone, but I did target it towards women. And, I've been in the financial industry for over 25 years. And time again, it happens that, when we're in relationships, we tend to hand over the reins of the finances to our significant others. And it may be 10, 20, 30 years that goes by and we're not paying attention to it. But at some point we have to. And sometimes that happens in the blink of an eye, or sometimes it happens over a short period of time. But either way, I find that women, are very good at it, but they have to be re-educated because they've, taken different roles in the relationship. And this is a great way for them to, re-educate themselves without the jargon, without the pressure of, oh, you have to do this and you have to do it right now. And I tried to make it as, easygoing as possible with such a, bland topic, I guess, and without it seeming too impossible.
Well, and you make it much easier, I think. And there's so many critical issues in this book that I don't think many people think about often. But first, we'll get back to that another time. But I want to really talk first about your story. So for the most part, your background growing up, you talk about in the book, life wasn't easy for you. But something happened to you and your family that was really a pivotal point in your life, a traumatic point in your life. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, we were poor. I mean, we were the working poor, essentially, right? That you hear that phrase on the news, and we literally lived it. And then my dad decided to leave. We were a family of 5 children and my mom, so a family of 7, really. And with my dad leaving, then they got divorced. My mom did not have any financial guidance, any good legal guidance, and she basically was left to raise 5 kids with essentially nothing because, back then, family law courts weren't as good at reaching in and taking money out of the parents' paychecks or, bank accounts if they weren't paying support. And my dad was a business owner, so he was able to hide any kind of income. So Here's my mom, at that point, wasn't even a high school graduate, and she had to raise 5 kids. And she did. She literally pulled herself up by her bootstraps
which is incredible.
Figured it. I know, right?
Yeah.
So I dedicate the book to her because she is my superhero. And she raised 5 kids on nothing, and she was determined, and she was not going to, failure was not an option for her.
Well, and it's funny because you mentioned, because it was the time. So I'm a child of the 70s as well, and in that time, so many moms stayed home, right? And and they were the stay-at-home mom, and they were the housewife, and they didn't worry about jobs and things like that for the most part. I mean, obviously some women did, but the culture then, it was like the man worked, and what you talk about is, I mean, that whole idea is how women kind of got in that boat, right? Of you don't have to worry about finances. I got it, and that's what starts, I feel like, so many issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that generation, don't worry your pretty little head about it. The man will take care of that, which wasn't fair to them either, because they didn't have the education for it either.
Right. You talk about your mom struggling, obviously, as you mentioned, but she was still able to save and send you all to Catholic school, and that you say you found ways to make money, which really resonated with me, because I too had a newspaper route. I started in 3rd grade, and then I worked at a candy store too. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, right. So funny. And but I did have a similar path. Did not grow up with any money. I mean, it was the 70s too, so it was life was simpler. We didn't have so much stuff, but it was tough. It was tough for so many people, and I think it really. Do you feel you must kind of think like I do, like that? It was very tough to grow up like that, but in the same result, it changed how you viewed money. And we'll talk about it too, because you have a big part of the book talking about mindset, which I thought was a fantastic part of the book, the money mindset. But that really, I guess that's, did you know that affected you as much as it did when you were younger, what you were going through? Or do you look back and say, well, that's what it was?
Yeah, no, I didn't realize it going through it. It wasn't until, probably not even until the past couple of years, where I started looking at, like, why do I act this way? Why am I so afraid of debt? Why am I so oh my gosh, I have to pay my bills. I can't stand owing people money. And why do I have to, save as much as I do? And I started looking at it, and it's just like, well, duh, here it is, because, there were times when your electricity was turned off. There was times when there wasn't enough to eat. All sorts of things pointing to how I was raised and the environment that we were in. And you create money habits because of that. And some of them are good and some of them aren't so good.
Right.
So definitely, I didn't catch on to it until later on, but it has served me well for the most part.
Right. It's, well, in part of the book, the money mindset part, because that really intrigues me, and I feel like resonates with, again, so many people. You write, I'm going to quote, "To truly understand your money mindset, let us reflect on your past." And you ask readers to take assessment, which is so interesting, right? And what did you want the goal of that to be? Like, what do you want people to learn by taking that assessment?
Well, I think if you know what drives you, you can choose whether or not those are the right things to drive you, and whether or not you need to make changes. If you're doing things because you didn't have money earlier, and you could go in a different direction. You could be a total spender because of that, and you're willing to spend every penny that you have so you can enjoy it while you have it. Right. So if you go into the money mindset as to why am I like this, why am I making these decisions, you can use that to create strategies for how to develop your future, your financial future, and knowing what drives you, and sometimes basically being able to change some of the behaviors that you do have that may not be as constructive as they could be.
Right. Right. You also say at one point, you say, once you begin untangling your early financial programming, because I like that, I love the wording, you can better appreciate how it informs your beliefs about money, any blocks or fears you have, and how you can tweak your money mindset to empower and enrich yourself and your family. Because it really is, it's like you've been programmed. You've been brainwashed to while seeing other people and how you live and how you grew up. I don't think, like you said, like, I don't know, until you really reflect on it, you don't realize how things have affected you. And most people don't want to even ask. As I say, peel back the onion.
True.
People don't want to see, why do I feel the way I do? Why, if for any issue, why do I have a feeling towards this type of person or that type of person? It's like, well, what happened in your past? It's like therapy.
Yeah.
You're doing
Totally.
therapy. Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah. So,
and it can also help you realize, like, why are you in repeated patterns too? You could, answering some of those questions could help you find the pattern and maybe break the pattern if they're not good, healthy patterns. And it also helps if you are in a relationship, did you attract somebody like you or somebody completely different than you? And, how does that balance out? And is one of the people in the relationship financially detrimental to your situation? And how do you fix that?
well, can you maybe point to or discuss like an example of a financial programming that someone listening might not really have ever realized? So like maybe, like you said, growing up in lack, how that affects you down the road.
Yeah. Well, one good example would be, and I'll pick on social media influencers. You see social media, whatever it's Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, whatever one you see it on, you see the influencers and they have these bougie purses and bougie outfits and things like that. And, you feel like you have to buy those items to belong or to be accepted in your round of friends or your communities. And you don't have the money for it. But you're willing to go put it on a credit card and pay it off over 10 years, which means it's going to be, 30 times more expensive to do it that way. But you have to have that to make yourself feel like you're accepted into society. That is that is common, believe it or not, but it's not healthy at all.
Right.
So that would be an extreme example, of course, but it does happen a lot.
Well, I'm not a big fan of social media in itself, and certainly I call Facebook fake book because things are not as they appear often. But it's very interesting because the book I went in thinking your book was going to be one way, and then I found it as I was reading, like, wow, this is much that you go into great depth, really getting into the issues where most people don't. And as you said, you kind of remove all the confusing words and things like that to really get down and dirty to, your behaviors, your programming. Why do you do what you do, and how can you change it? So,
right.
It's very interesting. It really is. So, so you wrote the book kind of like a guide, right? So I read that you founded your own company because you wanted to define success on your terms. What do you mean by that? And what were you doing? You were working for another company.
Yeah. So as, like I said, I've been in the financial world for over 25 years at two different broker-dealers. And I finally got to the point where I was constantly, you visualize the Heisman, the Heisman Trophy, the guy with his hand sticking out to, push somebody away from them or keep them from coming too close to them. I was constantly felt like I was doing that with management when they would introduce things to me, and it was a suggestion, almost more than a suggestion, that my clients should have these items in their portfolios, or I should choose certain things for my clients' portfolios. And I was like, no, that doesn't benefit my client. It's not the right thing for my client. But it was a constant struggle, and I felt like that I literally felt like I was 50% of the time pushing management away And, the other 50% of my time I was handling my clients and trying to do the right thing for them. So eventually I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I'm going to have a heart attack.
Right. Well, you weren't being true to yourself, right? I guess that's really right. Something didn't. Yeah. Something didn't jive.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Right. And no, and to the point where my husband told me, he's like, no, you have to stay there a couple more years because, you got some kind of payment to come there. And after a couple more years, that whole amount will be forgiven. And I said, yeah, but I might not be here because I might have a heart attack because I dread going to work every day. That heavy, horrible feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I was young at that point, or younger.
Yeah.
So I finally had to make the decision that was right for me. And it took me a year and a half to go out on my own because I had to do all the due diligence and make sure it was the right move because I was like, I do not want to do this again, right?
Right.
And
that's a tough decision to make. First of all, yeah, for sure,
it is. Right. It is.
Right.
And then about a week or two, I think it was about a week before I left because I had a target date of when I was going to leave. And you can't tell anybody in my industry. You can't tell anybody that you're leaving until you leave. And so a week before I went into panic, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What if I fail? Yeah. Right. I have, 3 kids who depend on me. My mom lives with me. I help my brothers. We help our extended family. If I fail, I'm going to let all these people down. So I was in a panic. But I will say the day I handed my resignation in and left the building and got out to the parking lot because I was going to drive to my new office, I literally felt like the weight of the world was lifted off me, and I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew I needed to be somewhere else and having no interference with what I thought was best for my client.
Right. So I know. So you said you heard all these, because I'd like to go into that for a minute. You said you heard all these, these things, these crazy thoughts that come in your head, because we all have the doubts. Like, what are you thinking of? Oh my gosh, you'll never do it. Da, da, da. So how were you able to overcome that negative voice that we all have over everything?
Oh. I still struggle with it, right?
Yeah. Well, we all do. I think we all do.
Right? Mm-hmm. Right. Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I just knew, I think I knew that I was determined, and I'm Irish, right, by background.
Me too, yeah. It's Irish guilt, as I say then. You know it well.
Irish guilt, stubborn, right?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to let myself fail because I don't want to be embarrassed that I failed and I have too many people let down. So I'm going to do what I need to do. And there's going to be some form of success here, and whatever I do wrong, I'll have to figure it out quickly and then, fix it or change tactics or whatever. And I just kept giving myself little pep talks and knowing that it was going to be better for me and for my clients because I was shielding. My clients had no idea any of this.
Oh, okay.
So I shielded them and from any of that until after I left. I was just like, listen, this is going to be so much better. We're not going to have any interference, things like that.
Right. So what was their reaction? Did they agree with you, or did you lose some clients, or how does that work?
Yeah, most of the clients came with me. You always lose some clients when you move. It's just the logistics of it. But the bulk of most of my clients came with me, and most of my clients have been with me for 20, 25 years at this point. So there's a lot of loyalty. There's a huge, deep relationship between us. I mean, I call them my family at this point because we're so tight, and I help them with everything. And they're important to me too. As raising my family, I would go to a lot of my clients who had, older kids, and I'd ask for mom advice and family advice, and then I use their experiences for some of my younger clients, and we just share experiences. And I think that makes the world go around and help everyone when you can, from your strengths and your weaknesses and your successes and your failures, you learn more from your failures. And if you can share that knowledge with people and help them, it makes it a much better world.
Well, I think it also, you're a genuine person, right? And then I think people love you more when they realize that you're just like them. We all have, the issues may be different, the problems in itself may be different, but we all go through the stuff, which is, so at what point, we have a little about minute before the break, but at what point when you finally left and you were like, probably a nice sigh of relief or that wonderful feeling, like you said, what did business just take off? Like within how long after that? It was the same clients, or you were just like building, you're like, okay, yeah, it's going.
Oh, yeah. So I brought my clients over, but that takes like 6 months. Back then, it took 6 months plus to get everybody settled, and then learning all new systems and stuff like that. So probably a year before I started looking to, bring new clients in, because I didn't want to bring any new clients on board until I felt like settled myself.
Right.
So about a year later, I started bringing clients in, and haven't looked back since. We've been doing great.
Oh, awesome. All right. We'll be back with Regina McCann Hess after the commercial break. You're listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. If you love what you're listening to, head to powerfulwomenusa.com for previous shows. And you can find us also on Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. We'll be back. Hey, Regina.
Yes.
Hey,
yes.
Is there anything you want to specifically talk about on the next break?
Oh, no. I'm wherever you want to take it. I'm fine. There's so many different, rabbit holes we can go down. It's not even funny.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, give me a few.
We're so like-minded. I love it.
Yeah, no, well, my goal is to help women. My goal is to help everyone, and especially with, this doubt that we just do to ourselves. So, we fill our head with that we can't do it, we shouldn't do it, or shouldn't try. And it to me, it's just like we need to kind of stop. We need to stop doing that to ourselves, and we need to support each other and not compete with each other, and just push each other to get ahead and thrive. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know caregiving and longevity is something especially for women, because we step out of the work world for an average of 12 years.
Okay.
And that means we're not contributing to our 401ks. We're not earning, raises. We're not earning promotions. And that seriously impacts our retirement funding, and that is a concern for a lot of women. So that would be a good thing to talk about too.
Okay, so we'll get into all the different issues, and then also the issue of divorce.
Oh yeah,
that's huge. Yeah, that's a big one.
I spent a lot of time. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst, so that's my niche.
Okay,
and I help a lot of women through divorce, and it's very, very personal to me, obviously, and it's my mission to make sure they have a better outcome than we did.
Well, and I'll mention that as well, because I have a lot of friends who really off air just got screwed in the whole process because they didn't know, and they didn't have someone guiding them.
Right.
When you know better, you do better. But unfortunately, you don't. Sometimes that doesn't happen until after you go through something, right?
Seriously.
So, all right. So we'll talk about that, and give your long answers if you want. All right. And let me see what else. Like the confidence, overwhelming, money taboo, a transfer wealth. So I'm trying to think what the other. Reprogram your financial patterns. I think I wrote that, but. And then we'll go into like long-term care, the Medicare thing, which I didn't know, which I wrote back. But and anything you want to bring up and say, I'd love to talk about this, whatever, you can just say that. We can whatever you want to talk about. Can we go back to the assessment questions too? Do you know of any? I didn't want to be so specific. Like, do you know of any assessment questions that really are the most important, or no? Do you?
I think like what makes you tick, as far as the financial questions, like, I'm going to them right now just to see if I can visually look at them.
Yeah, sure. I figured. I mean, no one, I've had that before. It's like, I wouldn't remember them either. So that's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. What your upbringing was, what your negative financial events in your life and positive financial events in your life, and how have they shaped you? Because you have a lot of patterns and behavior around that. And then did your parents argue about money? Because that is the number one problem within relationships, is arguing about money. Because the other thing that I have a little step stool on is having financial conversations at the kitchen table. That's my whole soapbox thing, trying to get people to do. Like, you don't have to handle the finances, but you should understand what's going on. So in case you have to take them over, you have an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, that's good.
Know that you're not getting screwed too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. All right. So we'll start back up, and then we'll see where this takes us. Okay. I love it. Thanks. Thank you, Regina. So you're great. Just great. Okay. Okay. Let me know. I have Regina. I don't know if you know. I have Regina in the studio too. She's running the board. So.
Sweet.
Yeah. Right. Two Reginas. So funny. Okay, Regina. Regina in the studio. We're all set when you are. Thank you.
I potted her back down temporarily, and then we'll go right back up once you reintroduce her.
Sure.
And we'll be starting momentarily.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Welcome back. You're listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Regina McCann Hess is my guest today. And Regina is the founder of Forge Wealth Management and author of the book Superwoman Wealth, How to Become Your Own Financial Hero. And welcome back, Regina. So you have extensive training, not only in financial planning, but in estate planning, insurance, investment. You are also a certified divorce financial analyst. So I do want to talk about that, because in the book you say you help prevent long-term regret with financial decisions made during the divorce process. So help me out here. What kind of guidance do you offer, and what mistakes are common for women making during the divorce process?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It just reminded me of one of my clients recently. She's going through a divorce, and she said a couple of her girlfriends had many conversations with her about, I wish I had. I wish I had done this. I wish I'd asked this question. I wish I had thought harder for what was right for me.
Right.
I wish I hadn't settled as quickly, and I wish I had not let him bully me.
Yeah.
And, it happens a lot where they just want it to be over. Mm-hmm. And I get that, but that settlement is going to impact. It's going to impact many years after the divorce. So, what I do is I help usually women. I advocate for them when dealing with the financial part of the divorce. And when you're married, you build a nice little chunk of assets. Mm-hmm. And you also have debt, right? So it all goes on the table, and we figure out, hey, now we have to split it, one big pile, into two, different piles. And what is going to work better in each, for each person? And obviously, when I'm working with my clients, I'm most concerned about what's going to work for them. Are they going to be okay on the other side of the divorce? And what okay looks like is different for every single person, right? Because your financial situation is going to change regardless of if you have a huge amount of assets or a smaller amount of assets, because you went from paying the bills together, and now you both have the same exact bills separately. You're both paying a rent or a mortgage, you're both paying utilities and all that other stuff. So it gets expensive, but you do have to figure out, all right, what does okay look like for me? And that also helps. And so, that's where I come in and I help, figure out, well, if we have this, that can help you do that. And, you can make this money last this amount of time. And, you should be okay on the other side. And, whether or not you would be eligible to get, some kind of spousal support, or if there's children, there's, child support, of course. But the biggest thing is when you're getting in towards the end, if you feel like, you've worked this out pretty well, and, then you get to the point where you're fighting over little things, that's when you can say, okay, what's the price of peace? And that is really important. So if it's, right? So if you know that you're going to be okay without that extra, $15,000 item that you're fighting over, and you can be done with the process and make it feel like you're negotiating a little bit better, you can say, you know what, I'm not going to fight over that because I know I'm okay without it. And I know that everything else looks okay for me, that I don't need to fight over that, because sometimes people will pick certain things to fight over, and then they jack up their legal bills or the mediation bills, and sometimes they pay more for those fees than the actual asset is worth. So finding out what your price of peace is vital, and that's why I work with mostly women, although I do have a couple great guys that I've helped through divorce as well, but usually I'm working with women because women are usually excluded from the financial advisory relationship. Usually it's the men talking to the financial advisor. And I've heard many, many stories of how women are treated when they do go into those meetings. So it's kind of a disaster for them. So that's why I wind up helping in a lot of those situations.
Is it true? I remember doing an interview years ago and with an attorney, and he said most divorces that came into his office, so many of them were because of financial problems. That's what.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, oh, yeah, that's what causes the most divorces. And I was kind of.
Because they don't talk about it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the biggest reasons for divorce is financial problems or the lack of financial, what's it called, transparency.
Wow. So would you say that it's important for people who are dating and maybe looking to take the next step and get engaged to have that financial conversation? Because that's an uncomfortable one, right?
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love your, teeing me up here, right?
Right, right.
I love this conversation.
Yeah.
So my whole going forward, my soapbox is trying to get more and more people to have a kitchen table conversation. Because when we were growing up, and it still is like this, where it's taboo basically to talk about finances at the dinner table. So I'm trying to start a new initiative where, hey, you go have breakfast and you come back to the kitchen table on the weekend. And, once a quarter, you talk about, you put everything out there. Here's all the things we have, our savings, our investments, our retirement, our insurance. This is everything that we have. We have our debt, and here's what we're saving. If you have those conversations, I bet you it would decrease a lot of the financial turmoil in relationships, because sometimes it's because they're not on the same page because they're not talking about it. Right. Sometimes it's because, somebody's spending more than they should be. And if they were educated about it, and had goals that they were trying to reach, maybe that would help them not spend as much as they are. Or there's also sometimes where one spouse is not wanting to share that information with the other spouse, which is very sad. And that is also a trigger for some women to get divorced when they're excluded from those conversations. So kitchen table conversations are one of my favorite things to talk about. Just even basic conversations can help alleviate some of the financial angst in many relationships.
Well, it's so funny because I know people who they never ask that question. I've always been someone, and some might take offense to this, but I've always been so curious about people and jobs and things. And I'd be like, well, how much does that, what's that salary like? Or something where, and you really look like you have three heads. Like, how dare you ask that kind of question? And it's not meant in a way that it's offensive or something, but it's like, well, let's all figure this out, are you, and are you getting paid? Because I mean, we could talk about the career wealth gap, right? The salary gap, and that's a whole nother thing. And that's almost where I feel like that part of that culture comes from. Like, don't ask the male counterparts how much they're making, because why? Because, I mean, how much money for the same job that they're making more? I think it's something like for every dollar a man makes in the workplace, the woman makes 83 cents or something for every dollar.
Yeah.
And it's kind of shocking for the exact same job. I don't know how that's even an issue anymore, but it is.
Still is, because when I started in the financial industry, it was, I think, 82 cents at that point. Now it's 83 or 84. And so over 25 years, it hasn't changed.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, so you must see it, right? I didn't even think of that. In a divorce, I mean, you see everything, right? So two people could have the same exact salary, I mean, same job, and completely different. And it's just like, why is this allowed? Why can't we fight this? And
it's in every industry. I am shocked when I see, like, sometimes in education, I'm like, oh, it won't happen in education. And then I have two teachers, and I'm like, oh, it does happen in education.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. So it's just, I mean, so let's talk about that then, right? So, you mentioned the wealth gap in the book, and why is it? And I mean, why is it happening, I think, is the question. And I don't think we have an answer, right? But you say on average, women save less than men because they have to do it all. They have to take off from work to raise the kids and care for the elderly. So let's talk about that, because that is a very, very big issue. And I think, I step back from news so I could be home with my kids too. So I can relate to that too, because we think, we want to be everybody. We want to be everything to everyone. And that's very, very difficult.
Yeah, and we put ourselves last. And I will say that on average, women step out of the workforce for 12 years, and that's taking care of their children and their ailing adult family members.
Which you don't even think about. You don't even think about that down the road, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it happens. You see it all the time.
Yeah.
And so during that time, not only are they not able to make contributions to their retirement plan, like a 401k or a 403b, they're losing their salary. They're also not getting pay raises. They're not getting promotions. They're not growing in their field. And then sometimes when they have to go back to work, 10, 15, 20 years later, they have to start all over again at like a basic entry-level job,
right.
Even though they had the education and they had the experience, but they stepped out for so long, they had to start over. And they've missed out on all those contributions to their retirement plans. And, it's just a continuation of adding to the problem of women not having enough saved for retirement.
And also, I think we're looking at a different phase in life where I'm pretty open about my age. I'm in my 50s, and for years we always, and I've talked to so many women now who feel the same way. And I had on the former New York Senior America, and she said the same thing. She was helping everyone and everything, and had been CEO of several different companies. And then she was looking to get back into the workforce. And, she's 60 or 62. And she's like, I have more experience than most people. Right. And I put that resume out, and crickets back, because she was overqualified. And she was like, I'm still in my prime. I feel like, I'm still going. And I feel like there's a whole part of our culture that says, like, well, women are old, they're older, they're not in their prime anymore, which I think needs to be, that conversation needs to start too. And we need to dismiss that, because it's the most outrageous thing. I feel like once you've raised your kids, you've set them off on their path, you've tried to work throughout it all. And now it's like, I'm coming back stronger.
Yeah.
And I think like that, save for retirement, and have enough invested where you can maybe start your own business. Because I want to talk about that too. Because let's go back to Regina, who, although you care about people's finances now, you cared about their physical bodies. You went to school to become a nurse.
Yeah.
And so I would love this. So what happened? You went to school and you became a nurse.
I did.
Yeah.
I was working in critical care. I worked in a cardiac care unit and critical care, and we took care of medical and surgical people. So they had a heart attack, they came to us in cardiac ICU, and if they had an open heart bypass, they would come into our surgical ICU, on the cardiac side. So I loved every minute of that. But when I graduated college, a good family friend wanted to teach me about the stock market. And, I was of the mindset like, hey, I grew up poor. It's not the place for me. I can barely pay my bills. And he said, no, well, for graduation, you're going to get a stock, but you have to tell me what it is, what you want, and you have to tell me why, and you have to give me the positives and negatives about the company, and you have to tell me, a little bit more background about the company and why you think you should own it and why you think, it would be a good long-term investment. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? He's like, nope, that's what you have to do. So, okay, I'll do it. Well, he created a monster because I loved every minute of it, like a world that I never would have thought of. And as a result, once I graduated college, I was working as a nurse, and I went back and just took business classes, economics, and all sorts of things just for curiosity.
Oh, boy.
It intrigued me. I know. I can't believe it. My kids think I'm a nerd, but they don't even know I did that. But it intrigued me so much. And then eventually I said, you know what? I think I want to do that. And I figured I could always come back to nursing. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to make the jump over. And, I don't know anybody who has money at all. Obviously, everyone I know is poor, just like me. But I figured I would throw enough, like my feeling was I'll throw enough pasta at the wall and something will stick. And again, I'm a very stubborn person. So I was like, I'll find a way to make this work. And it did. And it did. It was an uphill battle, believe me, because it's like a 90% male-dominated industry. And it is very much a good old boy network and still is. And I mean, I was in an office where some of the guys were really, really great. But there's still, a lot of the stories are, the women are ignored, they're not helped, and the boys, the guys help each other. So, but that was okay because I knew that going in that nobody was going to do it for me. I had to do it for myself, and I did.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you did, and you're doing incredible. You have your own company. So, you talk about, we have about 5 minutes left of the show. You talk about retirement, long-term care, death, wills, trusts, from all from a financial perspective. And what really struck me, at one point, you say there's so many misconceptions even around long-term care. And I want to drive this message home. You said Medicare does not cover long-term care facilities or in-home assistance. And you repeat that. So can you talk to that? Because I feel like everyone thinks very different, right? That's a shock to most people probably because they think, oh, Medicare, I'm good. I'll live in that nursing home forever. Go ahead. Go, Regina, go.
Yeah, they do not. And it is a huge misconception. That if you have to go to a long-term care facility, Medicare will cover it. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. So that is just a complete myth. And it will never pay for your long-term care. They can barely afford to pay for, the health, insurance that they have to. Maybe you could qualify for Medicaid, which is, that program, but you have to pretty much spend down all of your assets in order to qualify for Medicaid. So, usually people need to do some long-term care planning, and whether or not that means buying insurance or setting aside money in your portfolio, you still need to have the conversation. You still need to say, okay, well, what is my strategic plan in case I wind up needing, continuous care when I'm older? And nobody wants to have that conversation. Nobody like, hey, I want to visualize myself on a tropical island having a great time. I do not want to visualize myself in a nursing home. That's just no fun whatsoever.
Right.
And so it's really difficult for people to have those conversations and to take them very seriously. But I will tell you, years ago, probably about, I don't know, 8 years ago at this point, I had a conversation with a client. She's a single, woman. And I said, listen, we need to talk about your, strategic plan for long-term care. And, do you want your daughter to take care of you? Well, no, I don't want her to have to do that. Okay. All right. Well, then what's the plan? She's like, well, I guess I need
a
to
plan.
think about that. Yeah.
I need to get a plan.
Right. So eventually we wound up with, long-term care insurance and, would that work for her? And, would it pay 100%? Probably not, but it would cover a lot of it so that she wouldn't blow through her, savings in 6 months, 9 months, because it's like a barn fire when you go into long-term care. So we did all that. We got everything set up. And about a year later, she came in for her review. And she comes in every quarter, but this quarter she came in and she said, I have to tell you something. I'm like, okay. She's like, when you made me talk about that long-term care stuff, I was mad at you. She's like, wow. I did not want to talk about that, and you forced me to talk about it and handle it. And she said, and I'm here today to thank you. She said, because one of my girlfriends, her husband just had a stroke, and he is going to be dependent for the rest of his life, and they don't have long-term care insurance. They have no plan in place for that.
Wow.
And I know now what you did was the right thing to make me have that conversation. I was just like, well, I never even knew you were mad at me.
That's probably a good thing. Yeah.
Right.
All right. We have Regina, we have about a minute, 15 left. So I want to, your last little nugget of advice as we, head to breaks, the end of the show for women who are thinking about this. I mean, is it an assessment question? What do you want to leave people thinking about?
I'm going to take a different turn, and I want women to think about contributing to the retirement plans while they're working, and think about the Roth option. If their 401k offers a Roth 401k option, seriously consider using that, or at least 50-50 into traditional and Roth. And then if you don't have that, if you are at home, see if you can contribute to a Roth IRA using, your spouse's earnings.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you for everything, Regina. So a big thank you to Regina McCann Hess for coming on the show. Really. Go to forgewealth.com. You can pick up her book. It's called Superwoman Wealth, How to Become Your Own Financial Hero. And you have been listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Listen to more amazing women like Regina. Go to powerfulwomanusa.com and get on the newsletter list to learn about upcoming events. I'm Jill Conway. Thank you for listening to this show, celebrating and empowering women. I hope you are inspired to pursue your goals, believe in yourself, be courageous, and dream bigger. I'm here to remind you that your voice matters, that your story has power, and I hope you join me next time.